All right, good evening everyone. Chaplain Van Sloten, Brigade, and K4 RC East Chaplain. The next 4 sessions of LDP are evolving around moral leadership training, which is, in my mind, and I hope you would agree, of great significance for a lot of reasons. I had a 10-slide slideshow for you tonight that evidently did not work out. No error on my part, but yeah, that too. Yeah. But if you want the slides, I'd be happy to push them out to everybody. In fact, I think I'll probably do that. I was also encouraged, and I want to try to get you in and out of here no more than 45 minutes and honor and respect your time. I was encouraged to try to make these sessions interactive and a dialogue as much as possible. That's a challenge for me. I'm a preacher. Preaching generally isn't much of a dialogue or very interactive, but and not having the slides is going to make that even a little bit harder. I was going to ask for some volunteers to read some quotes and some things, and so please bear with me, and as much as possible, please do participate. So want to begin again, moral leadership training. We had this first initial introductory session on this in Germany. Moral leadership training is part of Army doctrine. Its foundation is in AR 165-1, Chaplain Corps Activities. Moral leadership training is a commander's program led and facilitated by the chaplain in order to promote morals and morality and ethics within the Army and within the unit, within the organization. And you don't have to look around very far, even within our own organization and certainly across the Army, to realize this is much needed and very necessary. I wanted to make reference to, since we had that introductory session in Germany, right around Thanksgiving, 27 November, a new DA-PAM on moral leadership was published. DA-PAM 165-19, moral leadership. So its foundation is in AR 165-1, and this DA-PAM 165-19 kind of lays out the 5 W's of moral leadership: who, what, where, why, and when. And this is I think a really important topic. I want to begin and I was going to ask for some volunteers to read some of these. I'm going to have to read them myself, unless you really want to come up and read. A handful of definitions, and because you can't see them for yourself on the screen and read them for yourself there, listen very carefully to these 5 definitions, and I want to ask you for some of your responses. What strikes you in these definitions? What stands out in these definitions and why? So with that preface, listen very carefully to these 5 definitions. The first is the definition of the Army ethic, which is really foundational to the Army and to our identity as professional soldiers within this organization, the United States Army. The Army ethic. Here's the definition for the Army ethic. Listen for how this strikes you, what stands out and why. The Army ethic is the set of enduring moral principles, values, beliefs, and laws that guide the Army profession and create the culture of trust essential to Army professionals in the conduct of missions, performance of duty, and all aspects of life. How about a volunteer or 2 or 3? What stands out? What strikes you in that definition and why? Major Jacobs, sound off.
Culture of trust.
Say it again.
Culture of trust.
Culture of trust. Is it important to build and establish and maintain a culture of trust, not only within the Army, but from the Army to the American people? Is that important? It's absolutely essential. What else? Anything else you caught stands out to you and why? Yes?
Just the first part there, sir, about enduring, so that it should be consistent.
Enduring. Our nation has an enduring legacy, historical legacy, of some really significant and valuable stuff. And this enduring set of moral principles, values, beliefs, and laws that sets the United States of America apart from any and all other nations. Now, our country has problems. You don't have to look far to see that. But our country is still, in spite of its problems, the absolute best country in the world to live in. Ask any foreigner and people that live in most any other country. And it's because of that enduring set of moral principles, values, beliefs, and laws. Anything else that stands out to you and why? Yes, Major Bozo.
Enduring, so at the very end it mentions not just in the performance of your duties, but in all aspects.
All aspects of life. The Army ethic is not just for being in an Army uniform and on duty and on mission. It's for all aspects of life, and it can serve you and your families and our nation well in all aspects of life. All right? I think we caught that pretty good. Here's the second definition. Again, listen closely for what stands out and why. Leadership. Leadership is the activity of influencing people by providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission and improve the organization. What stands out and why?
Influencing people.
Influencing people. That is the what of leadership. Did you catch the how? Providing purpose, direction, and motivation. And what was the why?
Improving the organization.
Improve the organization and accomplish the mission. Very similar. Third definition. Almost identical with the addition of basically one word. Moral leadership. Moral leadership is the process of influencing people by providing moral purpose, direction, or motivation to accomplish the mission and improve the organization consistent with the Army ethic. Should leadership be moral leadership? You doggone right it should. Leadership ought to be moral leadership. That results in improved people, improved soldiers, which results in an improved organization. How do you improve an organization? Any organization. You improve people within that organization, right? Right? And how do you improve people? You take them to chapel. Right? Well, seriously, just a shameless plug. I got to do that as a chaplain. And by the way, just a quick shameless plug for chapel. Recent Gallup poll study, I mentioned this in the staff sync the other day. Recent Gallup poll study said in 2020, of a whole bunch of demographics of people in the United States of America, the group that rated their mental health as the group that most rated their mental health as excellent, and the only group who rated their mental health as having improved from 2019 to 2020 was those who attend weekly religious services. Now that's just one of numerous studies over the last 10 to 20 or 30 years that show very plainly and very clearly that those who are religious and practice religion and attend religious services and belong to religious communities are generally holistically more healthier than those who are not religious, do not belong to religious communities, do not attend religious services, and do not practice religion. That's not me saying that. That's what numerous studies have said. Just a plug there. So how do you improve people? You take them to chapel. No. How do you improve people? You provide them purpose, direction, and motivation. And you could do that regardless of religion. I think religion could factor in really nicely and really well. But you can do that aside from and regardless of religion. You can improve an organization by improving its people. And you do that by providing purpose, direction, motivation. Fourth definition, character. Character is described as the moral and ethical quality that helps leaders determine what is right and gives a leader motivation to do what is appropriate, regardless of the circumstances or consequences. Anything that stands out in that definition of character? Yes, Cap Faith.
Regardless of consequences. That's easy.
You doggone right. Doing the right thing as a leader, or not, but especially as a leader, in any and all circumstances and regardless of consequences is not always easy. but it's right. Anything else that stood out to you and why? A couple references there too, and then gets at, again, the morality. And you can't separate morality from leadership. You can't separate morality from character. Helps leaders determine what is right and gives leaders motivation to do what is appropriate. Morals is all about right and wrong and doing what is right. Right for others, right for the organization, right for yourself. Fifth definition, last one. Moral courage. Moral courage is the commitment to do what is right, despite risk, adversity, and fear. It empowers leaders to stand firm on values, principles, and convictions in taking responsibility for decisions and actions. Moral courage. Do what is right, no matter what. What's the right thing to do? And what are the values that we as leaders in the U.S. Army, what are the values that we are to stand on? What are they? What are the values that we as U.S. Army soldiers, what are the values that we are to stand on? The Army values, right? And the Army values aren't just something you learn at basic training and then throw away. The Army values are absolutely essential for individuals and for units and organizations and for the U.S. Army as a whole. If you don't think the Army values are important, I would call to question your character, your competence, and your commitment. They are of the utmost importance, and adherence to and application of those Army values can change everything. For you, for your relationships, for your family, for our Army, and for our country. I mean, think about this. What would our country, what would our world, what would our Army look like if we all, a whole lot more, adhered to and applied the Army values to our lives and to our relationships? Man, our world would be a very, very different place. We'd be out of a job right here. If the people and institutions of Kosovo would adhere to and apply the Army values, we'd be out of a job. And so these values are of the utmost importance when adhered to and when applied. Question for you. What's more important? People or the mission? Which comes first? Mission?
People!
Depends. Trick question. In my mind, it's both and. I don't think you could put one over the other. Because you can't accomplish the mission without people. All right, let's drive on. Colonel Soltz, you made reference to this, but I wanted to invite any of our senior leaders who have read and are familiar with the report of the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee to speak to that report, even briefly, and the correlation between that report and the Army values. So you want to address that again, or?
Yeah, so just from my standpoint, I looked at it and I actually watched the videos and stuff on it. I think just some of the things that have come out of that already, and I've talked to people, unfortunately you never want to have positives come out of a negative, but I think changing our missing soldier policy is quite a most direct action things that I've seen. And I mean, just I've talked to a few folks, I mean, typically whenever I've had a soldier that's gone on the table, my initial thought on that soldier is, well, he's probably a dirtbag, or she's a dirtbag, just doesn't want to show up to formation or drill, and maybe something else.
People first, winning matters. And you win by taking care of people. And the Army, there are many instances, Fort Hood in particular, but there are others where we've failed to take care of people. And again, if we really adhered to and applied the Army values, then we wouldn't need a SHARP program, would we? And we wouldn't need a suicide intervention or prevention program if we really applied these values, because they work. They work. So I want to dig into a little bit further beginning to dig into a little bit further the Army values. You know them. There's 7 of them: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. Together they form the acronym or the acrostic leadership. The Army values are part of and inherent to moral principles of the Army ethic. They are the baseline, core, and foundation of every soldier. They define soldiers, who they are, what they do, what they stand for. They drive soldiers internally, their beliefs, and externally, their actions at home and work, in peace and war. Are the Army values your baseline, your core, your foundation? Do the Army values define you and drive you? They should. They should. And the more that they do, the better off you're going to be, the better off the people around you are going to be, and the better off our organization is going to be if these values are our base, our core, and our foundation that drive us and define us. Would you agree? I hope so and trust so. We need to embrace and embody these values, not only for our good, but for the good of others around us, the good of our organization, the good of our Army, and the good of our country. So I want to take just a brief further look at the first of these 2 Army values, loyalty. Anybody, by the way, I know I mentioned this in Germany, anybody got that little Soldier's Creed on one side, Army values on the other side, little card in your wallet yet? I've got mine. Anybody else got that? Got theirs yet? I'm the only one that's got it in my wallet? All right. I don't know if they produce those anymore or not. I thought it was worth having and hanging on to and keeping handy as a reminder. Loyalty. Bear true faith and allegiance to the U.S. Constitution, the Army, your unit, and other soldiers. This means supporting the military and civilian chain of command, as well as devoting oneself to the welfare of others. I want you to remember that phrase. Loyalty is devoting oneself to the welfare of others. And you can rightly equate, if you were to search Webster's dictionary for loyalty, you're going to equate it with allegiance and with faithfulness in relationships with and to others. And again, just imagine what our relationships, our families, our Army, our country, our world would look like if people were more loyal, more faithful, had more allegiance to one another, and thought of others and the welfare of others above and beyond their own. Our world would be a very, very different place. Couple questions for you in regards to loyalty. Would your seniors, your peers, your subordinates, would they all affirm that you are devoted to their welfare? All of them. Or is there anyone within your sphere of influence, be they seniors, peers, or subordinates, that would say, no, I don't think he or she is devoted to my welfare? The goal would be that everyone that we work with or around that's in our sphere of influence, be they above us or lateral to us or below us, that they would all be able to affirm, yeah, I know that he or she is devoted to my welfare, my good, wants my best, wants me to grow, wants me to develop, wants me to do better. That can involve discipline. That can involve holding accountability to standards. But it has to be done the right way, and when it's done the right way, someone will know he or she is devoted to my welfare. They want good for me. And we have a lot of leaders that I know are committed to the welfare of soldiers. But that's a good question to ask yourself. Here's another question I think it's important to ask about loyalty. It defines loyalty, what it is: true faith, allegiance to the Constitution, the Army, your unit, other soldiers. I think it's important to look at the other side of loyalty. How would you define loyalty in a negative sense? Rather than loyalty is, what would be some examples of loyalty is not? What? Fill in the blank. How would you answer that? What is not loyalty? Anyone, a volunteer. Give me an example of what is not loyalty. Yes.
Covering up the bad things.
Say it again.
Covering
Yeah, not holding somebody accountable or covering up something that was bad. You've probably heard this story. I've heard it a few times since I've been here and heard it again yesterday. Just about 21 years ago, not far from here, my understanding, if I get it right, LT Sergeant Ham, you can correct me if I get it wrong, but not very far from him at all in the municipality of Atina in January the year 2000, a U.S. Army Staff Sergeant on K4 brutally raped and sodomized and murdered an 11-year-old girl. And somebody took him to task and held him accountable, when they probably, maybe, perhaps could have turned a blind eye and looked the other way and said, well, shit happens. Blame it on the Serbs. That's not loyalty. Loyalty is faithfulness, allegiance for the welfare of others. Anybody else think of anything else? Loyalty is not what? What is not loyalty? Loyalty is not breaking trust, not violating the trust of another person. And again, you ain't got to look far to see all kinds of examples of broken trust in our ranks. Loyalty is not breaking trust with seniors, peers, or subordinates. It's being faithful and true and devoted with allegiance to the Constitution, the Army, your unit, yourself, and for the welfare of others. Duty. Simply defined as fulfill your obligations. Duty is the legal and moral obligation to do what should be done without being told. What are obligations? What are obligations? What's a synonym or another word or another way to describe obligations? Talk to me. Responsibilities. Did I hear duties? Obligations. Yeah. Responsibilities. Duties. Requirements. Are obligations optional? No. They're not optional. How about, what does it mean to do what should be done without being told? How would you further describe that? What does it mean to do what should be done without having to be told?
Initiative.
That's initiative. That's initiative. What else is it?
Integrity.
That's integrity. Do what needs to be done without being told. It's ambition. It's initiative. It's integrity. It's drive. It's motivation to do what needs to be done without being told. So the next slide that I would have had for your eyes, a picture of two men. It's out of a scene in the first episode of The Band of Brothers. First episode's called Currahee. It's where Easy Company did their training prior to mobilizing across the Atlantic overseas for their mission. And if you, shameless plug here for Band of Brothers. I know I asked in Germany, who's not seen Band of Brothers? Raise your hand. Shame on you. Shame on you. I publicly shame you, Major Smith. You need to watch Band of Brothers over the course of this deployment. Absolutely.
Beyonce gave it to me. Bring that up.
That's good. Sorry. I'm sorry. No, I know it is. I know it is. I sympathize with you. But do watch the Band of Brothers, or go back and watch it again for the umpteenth time. But in that first episode, there's a contrast between two leaders. One who did not embrace and embody and adhere to and imply the Army values, and one who did. And if you know the story and know those two leaders, there was a Captain Sobel who was captain of Easy Company. And by the end of that first episode, he lost command. And the other leader was Lieutenant Winters, first, second lieutenant, then first lieutenant over the course of that first episode. And he was devoted to the welfare of his men. And he put them ahead of himself. Captain Sobel was devoted to his own welfare at the expense of his men. And he was about accomplishing the mission at the expense of his men. But Lieutenant Winters was about accomplishing the mission alongside and with his men. in such a way that would develop them and motivate them and improve them. I encourage you to go back if you have access to Band of Brothers. If you don't, I think my trusty chaplain's assistant can help you out with that. Go back and watch that first episode and just notice the clear and stark differences between Captain Sobel and Lieutenant Winters. It's plain and easy to see. That's my phone ringing. My apologies, I'm not going to answer it. Pardon me? Yeah, that primitive phone, I don't even hardly know how to use that thing yet. Anybody else there with me? So this has gone a little faster than what I intended it to without slides, and which has inhibited, I think, maybe a little bit more participation, but I hope you're getting the picture. I want to share with you a story. I don't think it will take too long to share. A story about the Army values, true story. And in particular, I think it's it's about all the Army values, but I think it's especially about loyalty and duty. True story about General Jonathan M. Wainwright. Anybody know that name? I didn't recognize it the first time. Maybe a few of you do. Okay. I didn't recognize it, didn't know the story. Came across this in ADP 6-22 on Army leadership within the realm of the Army values, in particular loyalty and duty. General Jonathan M. Wainwright, this is World War II, on the island of Corregidor. And if you're really a World War II history buff, you probably recognize Corregidor. I know I've heard it, but it was good to be reminded of the context of Corregidor in the Philippines. This is a story of loyalty and duty. I commend it to you. The Japanese invaded the Philippines in December 1941. In March 1942, as General Douglas MacArthur evacuated to Australia, General Jonathan Wainwright assumed full command from the Malinta Tunnel on Corregidor Island. Soon the Japanese grip on the islands tightened, and the Philippine defenders at Bataan were surrounded without any support other than artillery fire from Corregidor. Disease, exhaustion, and malnutrition ultimately accomplished what thousands of Japanese soldiers had not done for 90 days. Bataan was lost. More than 12,000 Filipino scouts and 17,000 Americans became prisoners. Corregidor was in bad shape. General Wainwright directed the defenses with the limited resources available, making frequent visits outside the tunnels to check on his men and to inspire them personally. He was never fearful of enemy fire. A tenacious warrior, he saw men next to him die and personally return fire on the enemy. He was a unique frontline commander, a fighting general who earned the loyalty of his troops by sharing their hardships. General Wainwright and his steadfast troops on Corregidor were the last organized resistance in the Philippines. After holding unsupported against the Japanese for a full 6 months, Wainwright had exhausted all possible means of resistance. No outside help could be expected. On 6 May 1942, General Wainwright notified his command of his intent to surrender and sent a message to the President of the United States explaining the painful decision. He was proud of his country and his men, and he had been forthright and loyal to both. And I'll add there, in extremely difficult circumstances. His soldiers had come to love, admire, and willingly obey the fighting general. President Roosevelt reassured General Wainwright in one of his last messages to him, saying, "You and your devoted followers have become the living symbol of our war aims and the guarantee of victory, even though they were in dire circumstances." When the Japanese attempted to humiliate him personally by forcing him to march through the ranks of his defeated force, Wainwright's soldiers once again demonstrated loyalty and respect for their leader by struggling to their feet and saluting as he passed by. During more than 3 years of captivity, as the highest ranking and oldest American prisoner of war in World War II, General Wainwright kept faith and loyalty with his fellow prisoners suffering deprivation, humiliation, abuse, and torture. Despite his steadfast posture in captivity, he feared return to America, expecting to be considered a coward and a traitor for his corregidor surrender. Americans at home remained loyal to the fighting general and his courageous troops. To honor him and his men, General Wainwright stood behind General MacArthur during the signing of Japan's official surrender on the USS Missouri 2 September 1945. General Wainwright returned home to a hero's welcome, and during a surprise ceremony on 10 September 1945, President Truman awarded him the Medal of Honor. The general who surrendered awarded the Medal of Honor because of his loyalty to the Constitution, the nation, the Army, and most of all, his men, earned him the Medal of Honor, even in surrender. Commend that example to you as an outstanding example of loyalty and duty. Let me wrap up with this, and I'll turn it over to Colonel Soltz. Mentioned this back in Germany as well, and I want to probably will commend this to you each of the next few sessions as well. Pre-LDP, back in probably at McGregor, if my memory serves me correct, in a conversation with Colonel Soltz, it was made reference to just a catchphrase, the Rider Way. The Rider Way. We are the Rider Brigade, proud history, proud legacy, the Rider Way. And we had a brief dialogue about, okay, what is the Rider Way? And as I sifted through the Rider Blue Book, which you've all been directed to read, embrace, adhere to, and apply, I came across this little section 4-1 on conduct, pages 15 and 16 in the Rider Blue Book. Gets to the heart of the matter, I think, what we're trying to convey. As a Rider Brigade soldier, you are part of the history of the 2nd Brigade, 34th Infantry Division. Your individual conduct must reflect the highest commitment to the Army values, the Soldier's Creed, and the legacy of the 2nd Brigade, 34th Infantry Division. Soldiers of the Rider Brigade treat fellow soldiers and members of our communities with dignity and respect. Rider Brigade soldiers have demonstrated throughout history that when the task is difficult and the tensions are high, our conduct as professional soldiers is beyond reproach. All soldiers must continue to build trust and partnerships, not just in our formations, but also with our local communities, to include the local communities of Kosovo. Soldiers represent the brigade that has always believed in equal opportunity and will always speak up against sexual harassment and sexual assault. Soldiers will have the moral courage to say, not in our squads, platoons, companies, battalions, and sure as hell not in our brigade. This is the Rider Way. Commend it to you.